Chapter 10. One Last Reunion. Twilight Sparkle flew on magical wings through the evening sky over Canterlot. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted the rising moon. On that orb, the last of the first-generation domes was deflating and its replacement being set up, if the newspaper were to be believed. Twilight didn't care. She had long resolved never to go to the moon again. Not after nearly losing her daughter to it those years ago. She fluttered down to the castle courtyard, landing gracefully upon the grass. She walked through the familiar halls towards the throne room, greeting the staff as she passed them. Opening the throne room doors, she found the room empty. Twilight turned to her guard. "Pardon me, but where is the princess this evening?" "Magician Sparkle," he replied, eyes still forward. "Princess Celestia is meeting with the ambassador to the dragon nomads on the east side of Canterlot Mountain." "Ah," Twilight nodded. "In that case, I can wait for her to—" She froze. Her eyes widened. The ambassador? The dragons? It's been... already?" Twilight Sparkle turned and shot down the corridors as quickly as her wings could take her. The grass blurred past under Twilight's hooves. The unicorn flew just off of the ground, rounding Canterlot Mountain. Twilight crested a ridge, then she found what she sought. Ahead, a large purple and green figure dwarfed the white one standing in front of it. A voice boomed across the landscape.
10 years? She's been back for 10 years, and you didn't tell me this whole time?
Twilight could not hear the princess's reply.
I would have wanted to know. We could have written.
A pause.
That was not your decision to make. Do you have any idea what it is like not to know? What I've wanted to say to Twilight?
As Twilight landed behind Spike, he reared up and unleashed a jet of green flame, which engulfed Princess Celestia. Twilight shielded her face from the heat, wincing at the feeling of the grass burning. The fire faded, and the princess stood unscathed on the scorched earth. Princess Celestia pointed her hoof. "Tell her then." Spike turned to face Twilight. His eyes widened, and his snarl vanished.
Twilight!
The dragon reached down, scooped up the unicorn, and held her to his chest.
Twilight! Twilight! I've missed you so much.
He teared up.
I was starting to think you'd never come back.
Twilight wiggled free from his grasp, then sat on the top of his hand. "Wow, Spike! You've—" She propped her forehooves against his chest, looking up at his head above. "Grown! I've missed you too, Spike. It's been a long time since I've seen you. Although, it's been longer for you, I suppose." Spike lowered his head.
Too long, Twilight. Too long.
Twilight looked away. "I'm sorry I didn't come back, Spike. I tried to find a way, but it just wasn't possible." Spike gently patted Twilight's body with his free hand.
I know, Twilight. I know.
Twilight peered over the edge. "Princess Celestia," she called down. "How long is Spike staying in Equestria?" The princess flew up and hovered next to her student. "Barring any emergencies, Spike should be able to remain for several decades. I see no pressing reason why he could not live with you for the duration of his stay." Twilight hugged the nearest claw. "Oh, that's wonderful! But wait, how am I supposed to get a dragon his size into the house? Or in Canterlot at all? Have you not learned any age spells in the past decade, High Magician?" "Oh yeah, duh. Spike, do you mind?"
For you, Twilight? No. Do whatever you want.
Spike gently sat the unicorn down. "All right. 3 centuries worth of age spell on a dragon. Piece of cake." She lowered into a bracing position, pointing a horn at Spike. Twilight licked her lips. Energy flowed out of her and into the dragon. Magic swirls surrounded Spike, and his entire body glowed purple. Twilight grit her teeth and closed her eyes. Spike shrunk smaller and smaller. Twilight snuck a peek. "Almost right about There! She released her spell. Spike stood on all fours, slightly smaller than the pony who'd cast her magic on him. All around him, gouges in the grass marked by the journey of his feet. Wow, Twilight, you're still... Hold still, it's not done yet. Twilight circled Spike, horn aglow again. A little bit here. One of those there. Oh, I need to lock that part down. And done. That ought to hold for a few years. Spike held out a hand in front of him. That's amazing, Twilight. Boy, this brings back some memories. Like the time... Twilight interrupted him with a hug. I hope you don't mind I made you a little bigger than you were, Spike. Spike patted her shoulder. Not at all, Twilight. Not at all. Twilight released the dragon. Let's go home, Spike. And then when I got there, it turned out that Chief Thunderwings had died 5 years earlier, and nobody had bothered to tell the princess. So there I was, expecting a nice calm elder to deal with for my first assignment, and instead I get this young brute by the name of Black Flame. Between you and me, his fire was more of a dark turquoise, but he'd take your head off if you ever said it. The pair walked under 4 tall apple trees, whose branches were filled with ripe fruit. A smattering of clouds hovered near ground level around the yard. One had gotten caught in a tree, leaking water down its trunk. Here we are, Spike, Twilight said, waving a hoof. This is our home. The two walked to the front door, which Twilight opened. Within, a white mare with a pink and purple mane danced around the living room, humming an upbeat tune. Spike gasped and raised a hand to his mouth. Rarity? He looked down. No, Rarity's gone. The mare noticed the dragon and paused for a moment before a flash of recognition crossed her face. Spike? Spike, is that you? Spike smiled. Sweetie Belle, of course. Sweetie Belle bounced over to the dragon. Spike, you're back. This was the best possible day, and it just got better. She squeezed him tight. Twilight peered around the dragon. Better? What happened, Sweetie Belle? Sweetie released Spike. Oh, Mum, we were at rehearsal today, and at the end, Spotlight asked Applecrisp to marry him, and she said yes. He was really nervous, but then they kissed, and everypony was clapping, and it was amazing, she squealed. Spike turned to Twilight. Whoever those two are, but that does sound pretty happy. He prodded Twilight's side. Mom, he laughed. Twilight turned red. Now, Spike, I've been raising Sweetie Belle for the last decade, and she needed a mother, so... Spike gave her a light push. Lighten up, Twilight. I was just messing with you. And Sweetie Belle, you've grown so much from when I last saw you. You've become a beautiful mare, just like your older sister was. Oh, thank you, Spike, Sweetie said. Oh, Spike, I became a singer. She showed Spike a cutie mark. And I'd love for you to hear me perform in Van Hoover next month. Think you can come with Mum to watch? I'd love to, Sweetie Belle. Spike paused. That is, if your mom is okay with it. Spike! Twilight shouted. Spike laughed. That's never going to get old. The shadow of the Van Hoover playhouse spread across its lawn. The light of the setting sun bathed the theatre and its surroundings in its orange glow. On the edge of hearing, the sounds of the ocean waves accompanied the smell of the salt in the air. Within, the cast prepared for that night's performance, but outside, a unicorn and a dragon talked. So, get this. Old Scalebelly was complaining about nightmares, and I think, hey, I know some pony who can help there. So, I write to Princess Celestia. 2 days later, Scalebelly tells me how he saw a pony in his dreams. I didn't get it, because I dream about ponies all the time, but he was so embarrassed about it, I thought he was going to cry. He made me swear never to tell a soul. Except I just told you, didn't I? Don't tell the dragons, Spike grinned nervously. Twilight cracked a smile, then looked into Spike's eyes. Spike, there's something I need to know. What happened after I left? Oh, you mean when I became the ambassador? I already told you about Black Flame and how he... Twilight raised a hoof. No, Spike. I mean, right after I left. What happened with my friends? He avoided her gaze. I don't like to think about that. Twilight put her hooves on either side of Spike's head and turned it back to her. Please, Spike. I need to know. What did they do? Spike pointed his eyes away. Well, for the first week or so, we were all excited about seeing you and Sweetie Belle again. But then months started going by, and we worried that something might have happened. About 4 months later, we were all thinking it, but Applejack was the first to say it, that maybe you weren't going to come back. Then Rainbow and Pinky started yelling at her. Rarity and Fluttershy cried a lot, but time went on, and they eventually just accepted it. Twilight swallowed back some tears. What about you, Spike? I kept the library clean and tidy for you. I kept everything organised, so it'd be there for when you came back. Then, one day, Rarity came in. I can still hear her voice. Spike, it's time to go. That's all she said. I set down my duster and followed her out, and that was that. I helped her with her work until I didn't. Twilight set her hoof on Spike's hand. I'm sorry I left you, Spike. You know I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry I put you through all of that. Nah, you saw me out there. I'm Spike, the big mean purple dragon, who isn't afraid of anything, who doesn't get hurt, who... He lunged forward, squeezing Twilight. Twilight! I promised myself, if I ever saw you again, I'd savour every moment. Twilight patted him. It's all right, Spike. It's all right. I'm here now. She looked at the setting sun. Let's get inside and get to our booth. We don't want to miss Sweetie Belle's singing. The magical glow of the elaborate hanging chandeliers brightened, and the curtain closed in front of the actors. Twilight and Spike joined the audience in cheering for the finished play. Spike wiped away a tear. She was amazing. I wish I could have seen all of her performances. You'll be able to see her future ones. Twilight stood up, pulling her foreleg out from under his hand. We both will. Come on, let's get to the lobby and catch her before the crowd gets there. Downstairs, the pair waited at the door to the backstage while ponies shuffled past. Soon enough, the door opened and Sweetie Belle exited. Oh, hey Spike. Hi Mom. Spike suppressed a snort. Another great show, Sweetie Belle, Twilight said, hugging her for a moment. Thanks, Mum. What did you think, Spike? It was wonder. Oh my gosh, it's Sweetie Belle, a voice called out through the crowd. A young Pegasus colt pushed his way through the thinning herd and stood in front of the unicorn. Oh my gosh, you're Sweetie Belle. I mean, you're really pretty and your voice is really pretty too. He craned his head up to look at her. Sweetie Belle smiled back. Oh, thank you. Spike nudged her in the ribs. Looks like you've got a #1 fan. The colt stuttered. Sweetie Belle, can I have your autograph? He pulled a notebook from his saddlebag. Sweetie Belle took it with her magic and opened it. The first page was blank. Do you have a quill and ink? I didn't think to bring any with me. Oh yeah, I got a... He fished through his bag before pulling out a quill and a stoppered ink bottle. The bottle slipped from the bag, but Sweetie's magic caught it. Sorry, Sweetie Belle. Sweetie Belle held her smile. It's all right. She uncorked the ink and dipped the quill. Now, who am I making this out to? Featherfoot. Sweetie wrote. To my biggest fan, Featherfoot. Thanks for watching. Sweetie Belle. How's that? She softly blew the ink dry. Featherfoot took the book back while Sweetie Belle returned the ink and quill to his bag. Perfect. Oh, thank you, Sweetie Belle. He squeezed the book to his chest. This was my very first autograph, and when I saw you, I wanted you to be it. How sweet. But I'll tell you a secret. Sweetie Belle leaned down, then looked around conspiratorially. "Between you and me," she whispered, "this was my first autograph too." The cult's eyes widened as he gasped. "Oh my gosh! Really? I don't know what to say. Thank you, Sweetie Belle." Sweetie tousled his mane. "You're welcome, Featherfoot. Now, go find your parents before they start to worry about you." She glanced at her mother. "Yes, ma'am." Featherfoot bounced away, wings buzzing. Twilight sniffled. "My little Sweetie Belle's growing up. Her first autograph. Mom, you're going to make me blush." Sweetie already was. "Let's head back to the hotel." They began to walk towards the exit. Then Sweetie Belle stopped in her tracks. "On second thought, I need to use the restroom. Excuse me." She headed towards the nearest bathroom. Twilight Sparkle's eyes drifted around the room. Through a gap in the ponies, a small painting in the far corner of the lobby caught her eye. She wandered over, Spike following behind her. The painting, covered in a glass case, depicted a unicorn stallion in an outfit not unlike Twilight's own high magician robes. He stood on a tall hill, with a large tree on either side of him. Above him, the night sky held small painted stars. "Who's that?" Spike asked. Twilight glared at him. "What do you mean, who's that? It's Starswirl the Bearded." She waved her hoof at the painting. "Van Hoover was his hometown before the princess made him a high magician. Didn't you ever pay attention when I taught you history?" "Geez, Twilight, that was 360 years ago." "That's no excuse. I've even travelled to Van Hoover a few times while researching him, but I've never seen this particular painting before. I wonder what the theatre's doing with it." She studied the painting. "Something seems off about this." Twilight paused for a moment, lost in thought. Sweetie Belle walked up behind them. "What's going on?" Spike sighed. "Twilight found an old painting, and from the looks of it, we're going to be here until she's done." "I got it!" Twilight shouted. "The stars! They don't match any real constellation." She smiled, self-satisfied. "So the artist didn't bother getting the stars right. Big deal," Spike said. Twilight turned to Spike. "It is a big deal. Starswirl would never have a painting be made of him that wasn't technically accurate. Maybe Princess Luna changed them since then. It's been over 1,500 years since he was alive, you know." "No, it doesn't match the last iteration of the constellations either." Spike turned her away from the painting. "Come on, Twilight. No pony really cares if their painting stars aren't perfectly accurate." He looked at Twilight's face. "Almost no pony." "Exactly." Twilight pushed herself away from Spike and turned back. "How could he let it happen? There's something I'm missing." She sat down and stared at the painting. Spike turned to Sweetie Belle. "Better see if the concession stand is still open. We're going to be here a while." Sweetie hadn't made it halfway across the room when Twilight spoke up. "I got it!" She jumped to her hooves. "It's a pattern. See, you connect the dots and get something. I'll have to try a few line combinations out at the lab back home. But that's what it has to mean. There's something magical about it. I can feel it." Spike stood up. "Finally. Can we go now?" "Yes, Spike. Let's head back. Right after I copy down the star field." Spike groaned and put his face in his hand. In her house's basement, Twilight looked at the candidate patterns on the floor. Spike stood at the side of the room. She lit her horn, passing it over each in turn. Next to her, a stick of chalk bobbed in the air, occasionally scratching out some line or circle. Twilight walked sideways, eyes locked on the patterns. "Sample 5. Again, no reaction." Spike jotted down a note. "No reaction. Got it." "On to sample 6. She lowered her horn to the pattern, letting some of her natural energy flow into it. Immediately, the air around it distorted, and Twilight could feel something attempt to twist her horn off of her face. She released the spell and jumped back. The chalk clattered to the floor. Twilight rubbed her horn. It felt okay. However, The chalk stick had been twisted into a complex curved shape. Twilight cautiously walked over to it, lifted it, and peered at it. Sample 6 appears to be some kind of matter warping rune or symbol. It seems to have some recursive, possibly fractal effect. Further study will be required to ascertain its operation. Spike, get a scroll. Draw a grid on it. Spike produced a scroll and busily sketched on it. Twilight pondered the rune. A thought crossed the back of her mind. She tried to shake it out, but it persisted. Spike, the scroll. Spike added one more line. There, I got it. Twilight's magic yanked it out of his hands. You're welcome, he added, then smiled. Just like old times. Twilight Sparkle briefly smiled back, then laid the scroll over the rune. Standing back, the unicorn activated it with a gentle touch of her magic. She shifted her magic around, watching the grid distort and form smaller and smaller shapes. This appears to be able to produce small patterns in material. Very small, possibly microscopic. She paused. Twilight set aside the twisted chalk and fetched a fresh piece. She erased the failed designs and began to draw lines and circles around the new rune. It may be possible to produce a favourable reaction with the proper focus. The chalk danced around the floor, bending to its master's will. Perhaps it might be possible to... No, that isn't possible. The chalk paused in its path. Why not? It should just be a matter of... An eraser scrubbed away a line. The chalk found a new course. It can't be. That isn't possible. But everything fits. It all fits together. Several more pieces of chalk flew from the shelf and surrounded Twilight. All of them found the floor and began to draw. Spike, get my old books and scrolls. And some coffee. The next morning, Sweetie Belle sat at the dining room table. She idly hovered her oatmeal to her mouth while her eyes busied themselves with the morning newspaper. Sweetie took a sip of her orange juice, then idly hummed a show tune. The door to the basement burst open and a frazzled mother emerged, hovering a scroll. On it were elaborate designs and runes, surrounding the depiction of a crystal shaped like a book. Sweetie Belle! We're going back!